welcome back to the Pick 199 podcast, episode 65. I'm here with Muzzy
Hey.
and Coxie.
Hey, boys.
Snake, I'll let the boys down again, lads. What's going on?
Just a no show.
This week we have some EPL results that we're going to run through and some big news out of the EPL as well. So straight up, we had the Arsenal 2-0 win over Newcastle United. I think this is like 16 losses in a row for Newcastle or something ridiculous. Looking well and truly primed for relegation at the minute. And I don't think it's got to turn around any time soon.
I think it's 16 games or something without a win.
Yeah.
I think they've had draws in that time, but I don't think they've won. Poor form. Arsenal continue to move forward. I tell you what, as much as we bag on managers and how bad they are, hats off to Mikel Arteta and the Arsenal higher ups for actually sticking with him. It seems like he's actually got them onto a winner here, and they seem to be in better form than they've been in a long, long time. I mean, even when I think back to Wenger's last couple of years, probably better form than that. They look really good, and they look like they're playing for a purpose at this stage. So look for them to scare a few teams as well, coming towards the sharp end. Be very, very interesting. But yeah, can't give them enough praises.
I think a lot of that comes down to like just giving that young midfield time to breathe as well.
Yeah.
Like Odegaard and Smith Rowe and Saka obviously as well. Like just absolutely killing it for Arsenal at the minute, and Aubameyang actually finally doing something for the team as well.
I'll tell you what, Smith Rowe is really knocking hard on that England cap.
Absolutely,
he's really knocking hard to take a lot of people out of their spots. He's been incredible for them.
Well, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about like just the absolute plethora of like midfielders that England has at the minute. Like you think you've got Saka, you've got Smith Rowe, and then you've got like Calvin Phillips, Mason Mount,
Henderson.
We'll have Declan Rice as a centre defensive mid.
Yeah.
Like just absolutely like insane amount of midfielders that are in great form.
You know, Henderson, Phil Foden. I mean, the list goes on and on. Just absolute plethora of great midfielders. So
but they might actually be able to win a trophy the next few years, boys. Who knows? Moving on.
Fourth. We never know. That's their favourite spot, isn't it?
Yeah. That's it. Sunday afternoon, we had Aston Villa knuckling out a 2-1 win over Crystal Palace. Good to see Aston Villa back on the winner's circle. I think they were in trouble for relegation as well in the last week.
Yeah, well, I think Stevie G's now got 2 wins from 2, so it's good signs for them. They look like they're performing really well. Slight knockback for Crystal Palace. I'm sure Vieri will get them back in and give them a good talking to. They should have been a lot better. They played well. Just lack of ability to get that last pass in to get that finish. I think really let them down, which we're not used to seeing. And we're not used to seeing the likes of Benteke and Zaha this season sort of be shut out of the game. And they just seem to be a bit isolated, but I'm sure Vieri will fix that up. And credit to Stevie G for finding that weakness early on and really capitalised on it to get the Aston Villa win.
No, absolutely. Very good. Moving on, we had Liverpool with a 4-0 win over Southampton. Southampton really struggling at the minute. They just can't seem to find any form, but also they're up against the strike team of the year at the minute in Liverpool. No, Liverpool looking really good. Good win.
Yeah, not much to say.
We usually have our little Liverpool fan here raving on about the next England captain, but
they played really well. Southampton was really poor. That's about the wrap up of the game.
No, very good. We had nil draws between Norwich and Wolverhampton, as well as Brighton and Leeds. Probably disappointing for both Wolves and Leeds to not get a result out of either of those games.
Yep. And I would say for Brighton, yeah, I'd say for Brighton though that they'd want to how competitive they were to start the season. They probably want to win out of that. But they'll take a draw and continue on with the form that they're on, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, we had Brentford getting the 1-0 win over Everton. Everton, I think, is in the last 6 games haven't had a win. So I think they've been really poor, and Rafa needs to turn this around quickly.
I still think that's a huge result for Brentford, though, to get a 1-0 win on Everton. I mean, Brentford, like a year ago, they were playing the Championship, and then to come in and, they're playing at home, I guess, and get a 1-0 win against Everton. I think that's awesome for them. They'd be ecstatic with that result.
Yeah.
Well, we said that they do this all year too. So they have the ability to knock down a few wins against higher class opponents. So good win for them. Disappointing for Everton. Moving on, we had Leicester busting out a 4-2 win over Watford. Maddison back and looked really good. And Vardy looking good, scoring some goals too. So
good to see Leicester sort of get a win after they sort of had a bit of a lull there last couple of games. Good. Do you think this is the turning point, boys? I mean, I know Watford's not a sort of a big table team that could spark a turnaround, but do you think the fact Leicester got 4 on them might sort of be a tide to change?
I'm not convinced as of yet that this is the turning point for Leicester, but I think the more game time that Maddison has back in that side, I think the stronger they'll be too. So
I think this might be a catalyst for a bit of a run. Put it this way, I wouldn't be like to be playing them next week.
Yeah,
no, exactly.
It's probably not the best with how good Vardy looked, and James Maddison just didn't after he came off the bench last week. He's looked much better this week. Looked more comfortable.
Yeah, goal and 2 assists.
Yeah, and taking control of the game quite easily as well, which we saw him do a lot last season. So hopefully he can continue to do that the rest of this season.
And I think the other thing is too, Maddison's another midfielder that's knocking down the door for that England cap as well.
Yeah.
Very good. Moving on, we had Man City getting a 2-1 win over West Ham. I think Man City was pretty much in control this whole game. Just a late goal to West Ham that just sort of made it look a bit.
It was a wonder strike for Lanzini. I mean, he was outside the box, hit the crossbar, absolute Bolton shot. Like Edison had no chance. It was a great shot to crawl it back. But yeah, look, we were in control. I would have liked to see more goals before the half because we had so many chances and generated so much. But my hat goes off to Gundogan, had an absolute blinder. Wore the captain's armband this game as well. So yeah, played absolutely terrific throughout the whole game and really led from the front and really impressed me. And I have to say, after the win at the Champions League, I've got to backtrack on some words about Bernardo Silva. He had an absolute blinder. He just every week I say I'm just not impressed by him, and every week he seems to play better. So I just
keep ragging him.
I'll keep ragging on him, and I'm sure he'll end up getting a hat trick one of these days. But no, I just look. It's not a personal attack, and I think he's a great player. There's just certain things that just don't seem to fit the narrative. But at the moment, the way he's playing, I wouldn't be benching him. So I don't see why Pep wouldn't. I'm pretty critical of him. But yeah, I have to say when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm sure with the coming weeks, maybe I'll get something out of it. And shout out to João Cancelo. I think he's had 4, 5, 6, 7, something like that, man of the matches this year. Playing out of his mind. Really coming to his own in that outside back spot. So it's been really good.
No, very good. Well, let's move on to the final match of the round. And we had Chelsea and Manchester United. Oh, this is painful. Busting out a 1-1 draw. The one thing I'll say is I'm really disappointed that we didn't score more than one goal. But also, you could almost say that as well, Coxie, after Fred absolutely botched a great chance to score a second goal.
Yeah, but I mean, we didn't have as many chances as you did. So,
No.
I mean, look at that. 2 on target, we score 1. So we're pretty clinical, 50% strike rate for us, goal rate. So I think that's pretty good. Sorry, Roscoe, you can add more to talk about Chelsea or?
Yeah, I've got plenty of things to say about Chelsea.
Can I just, before you start, Roscoe, sorry, just before we start, thoughts on Jorginho? So finished third in the Ballon d'Or race and gave away probably the easiest goal to Jadon Sancho and just refused to track back.
It was a very big head scratcher. Like, it was as soon as he lost the ball that he just gave up. Saw Sancho there and didn't track back with him. Like, I still think, and I've always said, like, he's a good player, but I think he's severely overrated in that spot. I really think that people don't realize how much work Kante does to sort of like bring a hole for Jorginho in a way, like a lot like Varane does for Maguire. Coxie, I think he's severely overrated for what he does in that midfield. I think the other thing is too, we had Callum Hudson-Odoi starting one of his first games of the year too. We also had Ruben Loftus-Cheek in the mids there too. Two players that haven't seen much game time. We had Chilwell go down during the week in the Champions League with a season-ending ACL injury, so he won't be back, and he's been pivotal in that, moving forward of the ball and like slipping in as like a false nine here and there to create space. So, we definitely missed Kante and Kovacic in the middle. But I think the other thing was too, we started Werner up front, and that's fine. I just think we need Havertz up there with him to use that speed a bit more. Havertz seems to be a bit more clinical in his passing and whatnot, and I think Hudson-Odoi is just not quite the player that we needed at the time. In saying that, we held possession in that first half for like 70% to 30%. The fact that we only got like 6 shots on target for the whole game, pretty poor, I think, in the end. Like, and there would have been at least 12, 15 shots in that first half that we really just sort of, like, we really had a good chance. Like, we caught out the centre backs Bailly and Lindelof a few times, but yeah, look, it's not good enough for a team that's supposed to be leading the competition. And I think that's just about what I've got to say on that. It's disappointing for us because realistically, we were lucky to get back in that game. Like, other than that penalty, I don't think we're going to score. In a way, we were lucky to get a draw out of that when really we should have been pushing to win. But yeah.
No, 100%, Roscoe. As a United fan going into this game, you know, considering the games that we've already played, I was sort of just hoping not to be embarrassed. You know, like another 5-0 or 4-0 sort of loss to one of those big teams would have, you know, probably wasn't off the table, really. You know, could have quite easily happened, I thought. Then the way the game panned out, I think, yeah, Chelsea were probably really unlucky just not to win this game. De Gea, I think, made some great saves.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's been doing that for us, you know, just for most of this season. He's just been solid between the sticks, which is great. And no Maguire this game, I do believe. No Maguire in the
no Maguire played
in the lineup. So
yeah.
I wonder, you know, how the game would have been affected had Maguire been, you know, playing, because Bruno Fernandes was the captain, which I've always thought all along he's a great option as a captain. I think what he did when he first came in, when Ollie brought him in and turned the club around for that season we're having, was just I thought that alone deserved the armband, and yet they still gave it to Maguire. But yeah, look, I think a 1-1, and the best thing I think to come out of this game was that Sancho was on the score sheet again. So he scored in the Champions League in the midweek, which like I just felt each game that went by that he didn't score was just more and more pressure that was coming on from the outside as well as on himself, from within himself, I thought. And then just glad that he's sort of got 2 goals in 2 games, which might be I think it's going to do wonders for his confidence. Hopefully, get him maybe back to that Borussia Dortmund form. And I know Borussia, they play a different style to United, but nevertheless, I'm hoping that's going to impact his game for the better. The decision for Carrick not to play Ronaldo sort of got me in 2 minds, boys, because some days I think, is Ronaldo like a bandage on a wound kind of thing? Is he just going to be there? We've got a bigger problem, behind Ronaldo, obviously. Like, he's always saving us from these games, scoring the goal, and Ronaldo just puts the team on his back and gets us through. Which I don't think you can do if you want to win those bigger games, those more important matches, like in the Champions League. You can't do it, because those teams you're playing against they'll understand that, and they'll make you win the game by beating them with Fred. Do you know what I mean? Or with Rashford, or with somebody else. I know Rashford's a good player, but at the moment, it's one of those things. So I guess, I don't know, the decision not to play Ronaldo, I thought, like, my first thought was, why wouldn't you play the team that's in form? I know he has missed some opportunities in the Prem, but I think he still played better than the other options we had. But then I think maybe it was just a way to, see what the boys can do without him. Like, he did play the Champions League midweek, and maybe just to see what we could do without him. And he still played. He played. He came on. Wasn't a big impact when he came on though. But look, I think it was a great result for us. A win would have even been better. But beggars can't be choosers, and at the moment, I think United, we're sort of beggars at the moment with the way our form's been. I'm just hoping Ralf can, sort of, and he's got some high praise from Jurgen Klopp and Tuchel as well. So I'm hoping he can sort of turn things around. I don't know if it's going to be instant. I just hope I'd rather it sort of be for long-term success as opposed to an instant fix.
I think for Ralf Rangnick, like he was one of the main guys that brought in the type of style that Klopp and Tuchel have adopted. So that can only sort of mean good things for Man U. But going back to the not playing of Ronaldo, I think part of that was the first half. I think was just them trying to stay in the game, and I think a lot of that was like based on like the formation that Carrick had set. I think so. What it looked like was a 4-3-3. I think so. It would have been 4 backs, and then like I think you had Fred, Matic, and McTominay.
Oh, yeah, McTominay,
as like 3 defensive mids, and then but like I think the problem that you then had was, like I've said before, you don't have like anyone in that real central sort of role like Fernandes. I think Fernandes was pushed up front a bit more, so you had like a 4th and a close 3, and then like a gap in between in the front 3. So, I mean, that's never really going to work. But I mean, I will say McTominay looked really good in that game, and I think he's definitely one that should be in that central defensive role. I also think like when Donny came on as well, he played really well as well. So if you have those two, even if you had Matic in there as well, I think you'd be all right. But I just think Fred needs to go. There needs to be like 4 or 5 players that just need to go from that.
He does some good plays though. Like there was one point he got the ball off 2 Chelsea players. Like he knocked in another one and sort of regathered it. But I mean, for the good that he does, I feel like he does one good thing, but then he does
3 bad things,
2 or 3 bad things as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's good to see that Donny's now starting to get a chance to show why Ollie brought him in the first place. And I've always said I'd rather have Donny on than Fred, just to see how he goes. But I don't think you can. I think you know, the best midfield we've got. I mean, I know Pogba's sort of out, but the best midfield would be McTominay and Fernandes and probably Donny.
Yeah, I think so too.
Norwich does well there as well. He can come in because he provides that experience and that level head. And then and those boys up the front. But it's going to be interesting. I want to see how it goes when Maguire comes back to see how we play defensively.
I was just about to say,
I'm honestly thinking if he was there, we might have lost this game.
Yeah. Well, I also think though too, like I think for that positional sort of thing, like you guys have the ability to play like that 4-3-3 or even like a 4-3-2-1. Like so you could have like your four backs and then like Fernandes like in a cam role and then like McTominay in like a central role. But then you've also got like Sancho and like you still got Greenwood on the bench, I think, as well. But like Sancho, I think, should be in that sort of right mid or like close to right wing position. And then you've got Rashford as well that you can play on the left. And then you got Lings Jay Lings on the bench as well. But like if you did like two lower sort of like wing players to push that outside and then had Ronaldo in the middle or Cavani as well.
Yeah.
I think it'd be pretty sweet, but I think it's just going to come down to like whatever Ralf Rangnick wants to do, and hopefully they can get some consistency out of that team because there's definitely players there that can win games for Man U.
And I think there was a quote he said where he just wants to get these players playing to their potential, and if we can do that, I mean, there's so much potential there. Like you think just in Rashford, in Greenwood, you know, in Sancho. In a lot of those boys, there's lots of potential there that just needs to come out. And
exactly,
if we can get that, I'll be happy to get our potential, reach the potential, and get consistency with the squad. That'd be nice. But
I just got two quick questions for you, Coxie.
Yeah, mate.
With Ralf coming in, would you have liked to see him as opposed to an interim role to be just given the role?
As opposed to him having an interim role?
Yeah, so instead of, because obviously they went out and they said, right, we're going to have a caretaker, which ended up being Michael Carrick. And then they said, until we find an interim manager, would you have preferred that they just gave him the role outright?
Yeah, honestly would. I'm not a big fan of this interim kind of things that they do. Like, you know, I mean, going back, we've tried to sign Pochettino 3 times, and each time we've had an interim manager, and each time we've just kept that manager on.
Yeah,
because we've sort of done well. I think if the players and the whole club knows that, you know, Ralph's only on till the end of the season, and then they've got someone else to impress, someone else to prove themselves to. I don't know. I think for them to know that if Ralph's the man, if he's going to be the bloke for the, you know, unforeseeable future, they've got to work a lot harder. And I think it sort of provides a bit of stability as well.
Yeah. Because we saw like
they said Ralph's staying on anyway in some capacity with the club, but you know,
we've seen we've seen what he's done with the RB Leipzig team. Produce some absolute superstar players. They play very attractive football, regardless of what you think about their stance on being the Red Bull team, whatever. You have to admit that they play some really good football, and they've come up from, you know, Division 2 to Division 1 in the space of 3-4 years, and are super competitive in that division. And it's a lot to do with what he done in that division and what he had done for that team. I think they should have given him the role outright. I think they should have said, "Yep, rightio, we looked for interim, but we got the guy we wanted, regardless of whether they did or not." Should have just said, "We got the guy that we wanted. We'll chuck him in there, see how he goes, give him some time, let him breathe." Because all these, I agree with you with the interim stuff. I feel like it just doesn't work.
And I think from from like a manager's point of view, I think they're not. It's almost like they don't have the trust or the faith of the board. They've been given this role where they've got to show success within such a short space of time, and if they don't, they're out.
Yeah,
I think what Ralph did with those teams, he had time to do that, because it takes time to do that with clubs. And if you want greatness, you can't do it in a year. You can't do it in 6 months.
Can't do it in 6 months. Yeah, I think the only other thing,
years to build.
Yeah, the only other thing that I've heard or seen is that Ralph is now so he's the interim manager, of course, but he's also there to pick the next manager as well, which just sort of makes me go, well, like we said just before, like just give him the job, let him set a standard for that club, and then go from there. Because like if he's going to play his style, and then they eventually get Poch is going to change the way that they're playing again. So,
and you can't have too much chop and change for a club. I don't think it's good for a club.
I think the best example of that is when Frankie Lampard got the Chelsea job. He was never told it was an interim job. He took that on as a role. That was his role. And considering it was his first big piece of managerial capacity, that'd probably be the only time I would say, yeah, it's fine to put in for a interim role, because you understand that the person's young, they've only just recently retired from playing football. Yeah, Chelsea took that step to go, no, he's our manager. And you could just see the confidence difference with all the players that he was bringing in and the way his coaching style developed.
Well, I think the best thing that happened for Frank though too was that transfer ban window, because we were forced to use our youth, but also like I think that allowed a little bit of leeway for Frank in terms of results as well, because we only had the players that we had, and then the juniors that were coming through like Mason Mount and like Billy Gilmore and all those sort of Tammy Abraham. So I think that's probably the only, like, Man U at the minute doesn't have that capacity because they do buy fairly expensive players as well. Like, if that makes sense, like they do go out and they're diligent in the market sort of thing.
Yeah, but I still think we buy smart. Like, we got Ronaldo pretty cheap. We waited another year for Sancho. We didn't pay that huge asking price Borussia wanted. We waited a year and we got him at a cheaper rate. I think Bruno we paid higher for, but I think he was worth every penny the way he came in and turned the club around that year. Got us in the Champions League next year. And Varane, he was worth every penny too, just to see him cover up. I mean, he's pretty much playing two centre-back roles.
Which is a shame that now that you mentioned all those players, and obviously like Donny van der Beek being the exception coming in, it's a shame that you mentioned all those really good pieces of business, and we always talk about the hole that seems to be Maguire, and the persistence to play him. It's very strange considering you don't really have to justify it if what you just said, Coxie. I mean, Pogba, even though he's let him go and then bought him back, I think he's paid for himself. I mean, how many titles has he won with France?
Yeah. And look, Muzzy, I was thinking a bit more about what you said last week about, if Maguire, they should play Maguire, and then, they're just sort of playing him there, as I said, just, to wallow around in mediocrity for a couple of years, and then it's not a big failure. But they always talk about bringing players in to patch up the defense. But honestly, I think Wan-Bissaka and Shaw and Varane, they're all quality defenders, with Varane being a world-class defender. I honestly think the problem is Maguire. And if they played Lindelof or Bailey there instead, I think that just solves the problem. Honestly do. And I don't know, there's, as you said, Mars, there just seems to be this persistence and almost not quit kind of attitude to play him into form or play him into a better player,
Which is it's sad to say, because you compare it to, for example, the Chelsea squad. Tuchel's not going to pick a player if he's not in form. It doesn't matter if that player is worth 180 million or if that player is worth 20 million or 10 million. And it's the same with City. I mean, numerous times have certain players been dropped because they've been poor that week. And it doesn't matter who it is. It could have been anyone. And I mean, the biggest extent that went to was Aguero. I mean, he's club legend, arguably the greatest player for the club ever. And Pep was not afraid to drop him. Not that I'm saying it's a good thing. I mean, it's just he wasn't afraid to stand behind it and say, "Yeah, I dropped him because he was out of form."
I think.
Do you think part of that though, too, was like we saw with Ollie, he did tend to like sort of pick and stick with players that probably shouldn't have been playing. Do you think that was more because tactically he wasn't aware, but also he wanted to be more their friends than their manager. Like, does that make sense? Like he just didn't seem to like manage that team very well.
Yeah. It's almost like he was picking off reputation as opposed to the form that was going on.
The form that was
I'm
on.
hoping that Ralf, he's coming in from outside the club, and I'm hoping he comes in. They've already, like, everybody respects him the way they talk about him, other coaches and managers and whatnot. So I hope he comes in and is that kind of guy that's just going to pick purely based on form. Because if you have players thinking that they can half-ass a midweek or a cold game at Sunderland or Stoke or whatever, they shouldn't be able to do that, to slack off in games like that. And I think there's a few players in United that sort of slack off a little bit too much. Maguire being one of them. And if they're not in form, they should be dropped regardless if they're captain, regardless if it's Cristiano Ronaldo. Just so they've got, because there shouldn't be any player bigger than the club. And at the moment, I feel like Maguire's bigger than United.
Yeah, or at least he thinks he is. I think the good thing, like when I've heard Ralf talk, is that he seems very sort of like rigid. Like he'll come in and he'll shake up that team a bit. Like in terms of like if they're not good enough, then they won't play, sort of thing. Sort of backtracking just a little bit. And like from what I saw against Chelsea, like I thought Lindelof or even I think Lindelof might be the choice to be next to Varane, only because I think Lindelof's got a bit more turning speed on him, so he'll be able to track back a bit quicker, a bit more diligently than
before
Maguire.
Varane came in, he was the pairing with Maguire.
Yeah.
So
and I think with a bit of time, like Lindelof will plug that hole very well. And like it's good to see your left back Alex Tellers get a bit of a run too, because I think he's a really good player that has been underutilized. I think unfortunately when he's like Shaw's been in decent form, but of the last 6 weeks I wouldn't have been playing him in terms of his form. So, but
he's another one that should have been, potentially dropped, just to show that if you're not going to play well, you'll be replaced.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I will say, Wan-Bissaka was unlucky to give away that penalty on the weekend too. Like, I think that was more like Thiago Silva figured out that there's an opportunity there, and I mean he took it. And Thiago's been just absolutely phenomenal for Chelsea at the minute too. So
he's insane for a 35-year-old free transfer,
mate. He's a freak, and he's loving his time at Chelsea, which is great. So. Let it last while I can. Well, before we finish up, we'll just have a quick look at the table. So top three hasn't changed. Chelsea, Man City, and Liverpool pretty much well clear of the rest. West Ham and Arsenal on the same amount of points though, with 23 points. Arsenal have really well and truly snuck into that fifth spot. Really only the goal difference from the start of the year that's sort of letting them down, I think. And in that 6 to 10 spots, we have Wolverhampton, Tottenham, Manchester United, and Brighton, and Leicester sitting on 10th. And I think teams 11 through to 17 are pretty much where we had them. I think when we did the tier list, just maybe a little bit more jumbled. Are we surprised that Everton's that low with the team that they have?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think they're that low. Like, if you look, they're only on 15. So I mean, they're only really a win away from getting to 10.
Yeah.
So I think they'll come back. They're too good of a team to not do it. And I think, and I know James Rodriguez he's a great player, but I think getting rid of him was sort of did wonders for their culture. Just having a player that thinks that they can, not try and they can just turn on when they want to. And they got rid of him. So I think get rid of him was a good sort of thing to do. I don't think I'll be too worried if I was Everton. They're only 3 points off 10th, so I'll get there.
That's very good. And do we think that relegation zone of Burnley, Norwich, and Newcastle? I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, be very disappointing for Newcastle if they go down. I mean, they just get bought out. I mean, your job this year is to stay afloat.
Yeah.
And that's literally it. Just stay afloat. and they just don't look like they can do it. So, look, the hope is that during the transfer market when it opens up soon.
Well, I was
that
about to say, do you think
splash.
that they're going to rely on a bit of cash to be spent in that transfer
Yeah.
market to
I
get?
think they're allowed to spend about 100 million in this off season. So yeah, look, it just depends how deep of a hole they're going to be in. As you said, like this season they haven't won a game. The best results they've had is 6 draws. So yeah, look, it's a deep hole at the moment. Hopefully they can find a way out. I think we had Norwich, Burnley, and Watford. I think were our bottom 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
Watford's
think we might have
the-
had. Did we have Brentford down there as well, or is it
No, we had
I
them
think
just
it's Brentford
staying out.
just
staying
in the?
afloat.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had them staying afloat.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's pretty close. Southampton's been a bit disappointing, but like Coxie said, I mean they're only 4 points outside the 10, so it's really close at the moment, except for that bottom 3. They're really behind.
That's it. Very good. Well, I think that just about wraps up episode 65 of the Pick 199 podcast. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe, comment below, and we'll catch up with you next time.
Yeah, cheers.
See ya.